I'm sorry, that the Holy Grail was code for the Ark of the Covenant, and that it wound up in Ethiopia, and that's the last time that they had any kind of traces of it, because this Menelik, supposedly, according to the legends, went to see Solomon when he was an adult and said, "Hey, you're my dad," basically, and he takes him in, but then Menelik steals the ark and smuggles it down into Ethiopia. So if there is any kind of like supernatural relic in this seed war, I think it would be this Holy Grail.
You got some quite esoteric questions coming in, but I'll keep
Uh,
going with them. All right, so Professor Hamamoto, can you comment on current bloodline merging between the Han Chinese, Ku Jin, and the Ashkenazi Jews, Larry Summers?
mm, yeah, that honestly, guys, I've not got that deep into it. I just finished this book in January and released it, and so I'm just basically got my toes dipped into the deep end of this pool, and this is a deep pool. Uh, but what I found so far is very compelling, and I'm starting to dig down through it. But I think we see hints of it with even the mythology. When you go to China, you have I can't remember what they're called now, but these serpent people all depicted, and these dragons. And then you go into India, uh, these I can't remember the name, but it starts with an N, but there's the serpent people. You just have all these esoteric stories throughout the world of this serpent lineage and these serpent gods. I think that's echoing all back to this thing that we're talking about.
So does this tie into David Icke's theories then of reptilians and shapeshifters and other royal bloodline is reptilian?
Yeah, I think so, because whether they're like true physical reptilian, I mean, like green scales and stuff, I don't know, or if it's they have this bloodline in them that originates to a serpentine type entity. Because the Nakash, according to which scriptures you read and stuff, but he's compared to a serpentine angel, a dragon angel, uh, and they called him an anointed guardian cherub in the Masoretics. But when you get into the Septuagint and stuff, it talks about he was a seraphim, a fiery one. And that's another thing. You go down into the Egyptians, the Africans, up in your neck of the woods too, the Druids, they all talk about these shining ones.
All right, well, viewers, thank you for the questions that are coming in. We're fast approaching 2,000 watching live across all the platforms. And CJ's wondering, did the giants mate with earthly women?
Yeah, according to some of the writings and stuff, they did. And the ones that uh, had successful births almost died in the birthing process. But they were larger than normal, I believe. But I don't think that they come out just so huge that they couldn't, even deliver them. But I think that's kind of like maybe they just had like really rapid growth and grew to this height, after the fact. But uh, uh, I don't
So
know how
was it
much.
what was it? Was it the size of the babies then that caused some of the mothers to die at birth?
Yeah, that was the word or the legends of it. And uh, it's like saying I don't know how much time that you got left, but I definitely wanted to kind of show this off and talk about this a little bit, because I think this
We got as much time as you want, Doc. Keep going.
uh, because I think this ties into it too. And this was another one of my fascinations, man. Giants and these elongated skulls.
Yes,
And
please.
yeah, for those that's not familiar, and this is from Paracas. This is a Paracas skull, but this is a juvenile. This is not a full-grown adult male. And you have this
Oh,
elongated skull, in which I got a bunch of signatures on it. I've had all my fringy friends like Timothy Alberino, Tony Merkel, and Giorgio sign it. Anytime I go to a conference, I take it with me and have people sign it. But modern day, anthropologists and archaeologists all want to say that this is from head binding. And I'm not going to argue with them that some were head binding, but I don't think all were. And when you are a child, I think it's they start once they become a year old or 2 years old. They wrap or bind or board their head and force it to grow out elongated like this. So you can imagine the pain, the headaches, the discomfort that you would be putting yourself and your children through to achieve this aesthetic look. And I'm a firm believer in whys. Okay, they did this. Well, why did they do this? Because they were emulating something else that they seen. And I know you're from Europe, but here in the United States, the mullet is a big thing, and it's making a comeback. And it started a few years ago, and one of the main proponents was this guy named Morgan Wallen, this country music artist that showed up rocking the mullet. Then everybody else started imitating him and trying to copy his look because he was an important icon, in American culture. And I think that's what we have here. There was somebody or a group of people that had this elongated head that was an important icon in their culture, and they wanted to emulate and look like them. And when we look through the ones that are known from head binding, none of the features of the skull besides the elongated portion change. They still have their sadrasutra lines. The brain case volume has not increased. The eye orbits are the same. I mean, everything, as far as a normal human skull is exactly the same. It's been elongated because it's been stretched and compressed. Well, some of these that they found, including this one, if you look, there's no sadrasutral line. And for those that's not familiar, you can Google search and look. It's basically a peace sign crack that's on your skull, and it separates these different skull caps. Well, all the ones they find from head binding, they still have their sadrasutra lines. But there's a large handful that they find, like this guy, that has no sadrasutra line. So we know by the large amounts of proven elongated skulls from head binding that doesn't erase that sadrasutra line. So that's a really distinct factor in some of these. Another thing is if you look at the eye orbits, they're about 25 to 30% larger than a normal skull. When L.A. Marzulli and his group of anthropologists and scientists and archaeologists went down there and studied these things, they did DNA samples on these things, measured every little thing, brought optometrists with them. They were really thorough. But the optometrist examining these eye orbits, he says that they were 25 to 30% larger. He said, so we can assume safely that the pupillaries were 25 to 30% larger also. He said, and the distance between the eyes right here, he said, is a lot more narrow than a normal skull. He said, all the elongated ones we find, it doesn't increase the eye sockets or any of that stuff. It doesn't decrease the width between them. So this is a genetic thing. He said, so I think, he said that these hybrid beings had night vision like a predatory animal, like an owl, because how the eyes are set up. And it kind of goes with the legends around the world. All of these Nephilim or giants, they were famed to be cave dwellers. So it kind of makes sense if they had night vision because they were cave dwellers. They were in the dark constantly. And they drilled a hole in the top of one of these and filled it with rice to measure the brain case volume. Well, in a handful of these, the same things, the ones with the large eye sockets and with no sadrasutra line, those guys had like a 15% larger brain case volume. And then if you go to underneath, this hole is where the spine connects to the skull. If you Google search, I think they call it the foramen magnum, but if you look, all skulls mount right here in the center for balance. All the ones they find that they say is from headboarding still have this mount right here in the center. But these guys, they're all the way at the back because to help it balance. If that thing was in the center, it would just be looking up at the sky all the time. So by mounting it further back, it better balances this elongated head.
Mhm.
So so all the ones that they find from head binding, it doesn't change the anchor point of the skull. So once again, it shows you that this was genetic. It was built in the DNA. And there's even been stories from Spanish explorers and things in their journals that they found mummies in caves down in Peru that still had unborn infants in the womb with elongated heads. They got drawings of them and multiple recordings of them. But of course, like the Smithsonian here in the United States, some people got their hands on them and they just mysteriously disappeared. And even the Peruvian legends go right along with these because Viracocha, that was their one of their main gods, the creator god. In their legends, it says that Viracocha was pale skinned, elongated head, long beard. These are all contradictory aesthetics from the Peruvian people. The Peruvian people were shorter, they didn't have elongated heads, they had dark skin, and they can't grow beards that well. So this, screams, alien or foreigner of the land. But it says that Viracocha pulls up on this, on serpents, a bed of serpents without paddles, and that he has a group of people, if you want to call them disciples, and they call them the Veracochan, and that they show up and they civilize Peru. He gives them the seven sacred sciences, teaches them how to do math, to study the map the stars, architecture, all of these things. And the legends tell all the different towns that they go through, and they have mapped this, and they call it the path of Veracocha. And without fail, every single town that he stopped at, they find megalithic architecture and elongated skulls without fail. And when he leaves, he sails off, him and his Veracochan, and he says that he would return when they most needed him, so to be watching for him, and he would arrive just the way he came the first time. So he leaves, and what happens? The Spanish pull up. What are they on? They're on ships without paddles because they got sails. They get off the boat. They're pale skinned. They're tall. They got long, thick beards, and they're wearing this metal armor, glistening, glowing in the sun, looking like they're God Veracocha from their legends. So they, threw gold and silver at him and give him everything he wanted and worshiped him like a god because they thought he was Veracocha. And that's how he, took over South America so easily. He went along with it. And then after a
Mhm.
certain amount of time, once they started figuring out he was no god, it was too late. He was done so far deep into South America that they couldn't fight him off anymore. But the Spaniards in their journals said that they seen a group of people different. That there was a group of people that had pale skin, beards, and elongated skulls. And that they asked them, who are these people? They're obviously not from here. Who are these people? And they said, these are the descendants of the Veracochan. So I think these were the God Kings, the hybrid race like we've been talking about, and they were the ruling elite class. And their subjects wanted to venerate them and look like them.
Wow, this is fascinating. You've got a few people asking about your thoughts on the pyramids and as to whether you think giants were involved with the pyramids.
I think so. I think that that is a pre-flood relic. I think it's a lot older than what they say it is, and that the what we call the Egyptians found it and settled there and built around it or maybe added to it because we have the same thing in North America. When uh, Lewis and Clark and all these guys started finding these mounds and these megalithic earthworks, they started talking to the natives that lived there and asked them, hey, when did you guys build this? Without fail, all of them. They said, we didn't build this. We found it. And we thought it was important, so we hung around and added to it and upkept it. I think that's the same thing with the pyramids.
All right. So next question is, let's see. Hold on a second. All right. I hope these aren't too esoteric. What about the mound builders along the Natchez Trace?
Natchez Trace. Now, where is that exactly? Is that North America?
Yeah, don't worry about that one. Let me go on to the next one. Can he comment on the Grand Canyon Smithsonian cover-up? And has there been headway made in exploring the canyon in recent years?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories and documents and newspaper articles that the Smithsonian hired this man to go out and explore, and he reported finding these ancient Egyptian like tombs and caverns, and they found all these artifacts and all this stuff, and it made the newspaper, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, that's ain't nothing there. Don't look here. And when they try to search it out, it was in the newspaper, this guy's name, that he was commissioned by the Smithsonian. And later, when people tried to dig into this and question them, they said that they had no records of this expedition. So they scrapped it. I mean, are we to believe that this newspaper just lied and made up all these stories and made up this name and put the Smithsonian's name to it, not thinking they'd find out about it and call it a lie? I think it's the same thing as like Roswell. That guy that found the saucer, reported it, and then told him that there was going to be a press conference. And he went out there, and they had this fake weather balloon laying out in front of him. And if you look at those pictures, that guy looks shocked because I don't think they told him. I think they're like, okay, come in here for this press conference, and then you just roll with whatever we say. And if you look at them pictures, that guy's looking at that captain and looking at this thing like, what the hell is this? This is not what I found. So it's I think it's another grand cover up, and we have even evidence in Egypt. They found tombs with tobacco and cocaine, corn, all these different things that's not indigenous to Africa. So it shows they were traveling back and forth, and they even have depictions of North American corn. Yeah, we were definitely diffusionists. We were not isolationists. We were sailing the globe and exploring all these places and trading with other civilizations long before academia says that we were.
So next question, is there a connection between blue bloods, Anunnaki, and the blue Hindu gods?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. That's what I was talking about earlier, how the Anunnaki sound just like the Genesis 6 narrative, making Nephilim hybrids, and then the blue serpent people in India. I think it's all the same story.
Satan's season is what exactly? Saturn, question mark.
Yeah, Satan's little season. I've actually talked to a couple guys on my program about that. I had one guy come on and lay out the reasons why he believes we are not in Satan's little season. And then I had two other gentlemen that were little seasonists that came on and laid out their explanations to why they believe that we are. But what that theory is basically is saying that before Jesus passed away and died on the cross, he told his apostles that he would be coming soon, and that some of them would not taste death before they seen him coming in all his glory. And so basically the little seasonists believe that our timeline is all messed up. Like you could add like another 700 to 1,000 years to it, and that's why you have the Greek Dark Ages and all this timeline jumbled up stuff. And they talk about Mount Vesuvius erupting and all these different natural disasters, and they align that to the disasters mentioned in the book of Revelation. and how in 70 AD they destroyed the temple. Uh, the emperor stood in the temple of God, proclaimed to be God and be worshipped. So they take all that and say that they believe the happenings of Revelation had already happened and that Christ had already ruled for his 1,000 years, and we are now in Satan's little season, and basically our memory has been wiped. We don't remember it because Scripture says that he would be allowed to deceive the nations. So basically, wipe the memory of everyone, and all this Gothic architecture that we see that's huge and beautiful and got the antennas in the air, that these are remnants of that millennial reign. And these buildings were tapping into the ether and free energy, and that's how they explain all these megalithic structures, that they believe that all this stuff was constructed during the millennial reign of Christ. But me personally, I love entertaining and hearing new thoughts. I'm open to hear anybody talk about anything. I try to be a what they call a good Berean. I like to hear everybody out and then search stuff out and see if it's true. Uh, I'm just not quite there yet as a me being a little seasonist, but it's definitely fascinating to research and look at.
Did the Anunnaki have elongated heads?
Some of them, if you go to some of the depictions and some of the like the hats and stuff, the miters that they wore, a lot of people theorize that these miter hats and these uh, like Egyptian pharaoh hats, how they're so elongated, that they were made to fit this elongated skull ruling class. And we even see, I think it's with Nefertiti and shoot, what's the other guy's name? Akhenaten. If you go to Egypt and look at their depictions, they remove all doubt because they even have depictions of them without the headdress on and having this huge elongated skull, and even Nefertiti holding up her baby with an elongated skull up to the rays of the sun.
Could it be that Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico was the site of a Bloodlines breeding program?
Could possibly be. I'm not familiar with that resort, but I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
Well, viewers, we just interviewed Juliet Bryant, Epstein Survivor Part 2. A mother's come on the podcast as well, and she will be talking about the breeding program and cloning and all the eugenic stuff that Epstein was up to. So look out for that one. Next question for Doc. Does he think Mount Akash is connected with gods or aliens?
I think they're the same. I think we get hung up on verbiage. If we take a textbook definition, what is an alien? It's something not of this world. So if we look at the Anunnaki, if we look at God, if we look at Satan, we look at angels, uh, aliens, all these different things, they are all not of this world. I think it's the same. We're talking about the same thing. We just call it different names, and they present themselves in different uh, lights as the generations go to be better received by the people. Because it's the same, even the same agenda. If you listen to some of these abductees and you believe them, they were taken, and what happens? Sperm is reported to be taken from the men. Ovum is reported to be taken from the women, and they wind up pregnant, and then miraculously, uh, the baby just disappears and is gone. So it's like they come in and take the baby. All of the cattle mutilations, they're taking stuff from cattle that biologically is the closest thing to ours. Our blood is almost completely interchangeable with bovine. So, I mean, when it's the same exact thing that happened in Genesis 6. The gods, came down, bred with the daughters of men, and made Nephilim giants, a hybrid race. It's nothing new is under the sun. They're doing the same thing they did back then.
What do you think of Jesus's lost years?
I think they're lost. No, I don't know. I mean, I've heard the theories. People say that he, went out east and got, schooled in the mysticism and all that kind of stuff. But uh, I'm one of these people that I don't think everything is in the Bible, and I ruffle some feathers of some Christians, but I try to be an honest, realist person. Uh, this was not a science book. It's not a genealogy book. It doesn't have the answers, I mean, to every single thing. Do I think it's valuable? Oh, certainly. But we have to remember this is not something that was written in real time. It wasn't like an ESPN play by play. It was written looking backwards thousands of years. So you're basically getting the highlights and high notes. So just because they're missing from the scripture doesn't mean that it was missing from the people of that time. It's just missing to us.
Do you think the true puppet masters of America are otherworldly?
Oh yeah, I'm a firm believer in the Tower of Babel. A lot of people just think that's a tall building, but if you go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, that's a retelling of that story. And it says that not only were the tongues divided, it says the nations, the peoples were divided amongst the B'nai Ha Elohim, the sons of God. Every time that phrase is used, it's talking about divine heavenly beings. And Psalms 82, talking about these same rebellious sons of God that was given dominion over the nations. It says, how long will you rule unjustly, show partiality to the wicked? You desire to live an eternal life, but you shall die and fall like any prince. So they're not talking about human rulers. I mean, if you're a human ruler, yeah, of course I'm going to die. Duh. No, he's talking to divine heavenly beings, rebellious sons of God. And it says that he divided the nations up amongst them to rule, and they're ruling unjustly. But he said, Jacob, Israel, is my allotted portion. And that's why right after that event, he called Abraham out and said, through your name, all nations shall be blessed. So it goes back to that Game of Thrones, that Deuteronomy 32. The sons of God were portioned out lands and people groups, and they rule from behind the scenes. And they're the puppet masters, I believe.
So, who are the 144,000?
Hmm. Me, uh, the way it describes is like basically they're, you know, virgin priesthood class type people. So it's like these people are, unblemished by sexual morality and things like that. So I've heard some people theorize that, this is just, Israelite Jewish people. I've heard some people theorize that this is a mixture of all the nations. Uh, I would tend to lean toward that because I'm not a Zionist. I don't think when it talks about Israel, that it's talking about a political nation. It's talking about, God's people. And we are all, members of, God's chosen people if we decide to be.
So, a former person who sent a question in has sent some clarification. The Natchez Trace is in Mississippi and Tennessee. There's mounds all through it. That's why I asked the question, are the mound builders these same people? Does that give any clarification there?
Mm, yeah, yeah. See, I think so. I mean, because just like I was saying with the Michigan copper mines and how that Ohio River Valley runs all the way down, into upper Kentucky and straight down shot. You have Tennessee, Alabama. If you look on a map and you had the mounds and stuff stacked up on the North American continent, that's basically the line they travel. So it's kind of like this. They used rivers back then. That's why all these mounds and stuff are close to these rivers because they were, I believe, coming from Lake Michigan down through the Ohio River Valley, and then once they got to Tennessee, they connected to the Tennessee River, and then went down into Mississippi and all that type stuff.
You're getting asked about knowledge of the Akashic records and reincarnation.
Yep. Um, my knowledge on the Akashic records is very surface level. I'd say the people in the chat probably know more than I do, if I'm being honest on it. I have a 30,000 foot view uh, of that. And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Um, a lot of Christians don't believe in that, and the Bible doesn't come right out and say that. But I got educated by a guest on my show not that long ago talking about Elijah, and there's some hints in there that there might be some reincarnation. You know, I mean, that I ain't saying that it's a hill I'm willing to die on, but there's hints to that because it says that Elijah, uh, he was taken up in a whirlwind, and then later John the Baptist is referred to as the second coming of Elijah, that he had the spirit of Elijah. And I looked over that, not noticed that, my whole adult life. But this guy Ben that I had on the show from End of the World News, he came on and did a show with me about Elijah, and he brought that to my attention. And yeah, the hints are there, whether it's true or we're reading too deep into it, but it's definitely interesting.
Do you have any thoughts on the timing of the second coming of Christ?
No, I mean, I'm not a date setter, but of course I know every single generation since, you know, his death has said, the end is nigh, the end is nigh. But I think we can honestly say that we are closer now than we ever have been. I think that all the groundwork has been laid. We are now looking into this, surveillance state. They're going to know, cameras on every corner, your smartphones, your smart TVs, your smart cars. You're being recorded and tracked everywhere you go now. The book of Revelation talks about, those who do not bow to the beast, they will be killed. Well, how are they going to know that? Because of Palantir in this surveillance state. They're going to know everything you're doing. Now they're wanting to get rid of, first they got rid of the gold and went to the Federal Reserve, here in America, because they're slowly stepping their way toward this beast system, I believe. And it's like a frog in the boiling water. You don't put the frog in there and turn it up to 10. You slowly start cranking it up and getting them closer. That way they don't jump out and they'll just sit right there and boil to death. So they moved away from the gold, went to the Federal Reserve. Now they're starting to transition to this Bitcoin and this digital currency. You got so many countries talking about going to a blockchain system. Once again, they're going to know every dollar you spend. And what does it say? Those who don't take the mark will not be able to buy, sell, or trade. So,
They just announced here, Keir Starmer, that they're going to force a digital ID on us,
yes,
more like a digital control grid, more like.
yeah. So, I mean, the groundwork has been laid, and we are definitely closer than we've ever been.
Question from RF: do you believe we are inside a firmament, as the Bible says?
I am a believer because I know there's some people that are what they call the flat earth community and the glober community. Uh, I do not dispute that the Bible describes a flat stationary plane with a dome on it. I do not dispute that whatsoever. But I think that God meets people where they're at, and he talked to them in language that they could understand and something that they already had a grasp on. They already thought it was flat and stationary. They already thought there was a firmament, a dome over the top. So God was just meeting them basically where they were, talking to them in a language that they could understand. And I compare it to when I have this conversation with people, because I mean it gets heated. There's some people that are flat earthers, man, that get pretty heated over it, and to even go as far as saying you're not a Christian if you don't believe in flat Earth, because the Bible talks about a flat Earth. Uh, but I tell people, when you were a child, you wanted to know where babies come from, right? So you asked your parents, "Hey, where do babies come from?" And you got one of two or three different variant stories. You either were told, "Oh, when a man loves a woman, they kiss, and then a bump magically appears in her belly, and a baby's born," or "We prayed and asked for one, and a stork dropped it off at our door." You know, did your parents lie to you, or did they just tell you a story that you could wrap your little mind around until you were old enough or smart enough to understand the real story? And I think that's kind of what God did there, because the shape of the plane or realm that we are on wasn't important. What was important was the story of the fall, the rebellion and the redemption and coming back into the family of God. That was what was important, not the shape of the earth. But I do believe in the canopy theory that before the flood, there was a water canopy, vapor over the top of us, and it burst.
Your opinion on the Gnostics?
Gnostics, yeah, the Nag Hammadi texts, and I think that's, I'm not a coincidence theorist. I thought that that was very significant that, during this time frame, shortly after, Israel was even made a nation, in Egypt, they found this stash of scrolls, and they called them the Nag Hammadi text, and it was the Gnostic Gospels. And this come out, and then just like a month or two later, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're like in direct, conflict with one another. And I tell people, I think it's kind of like God's perfect timing and sense of humor. It's like they put out this Gnostic deception and tried to, lead some people astray. But then the counter move was like, oh, no, no, now look over here at these Dead Sea Scrolls, and we could show you all these texts were preserved and not manipulated through time, and this is the truth. Uh, but they are definitely interesting, but I've looked into it, and especially the early church fathers, they that's who they were talking about, the wolves in sheep's clothing, inside of their synagogues, because these people were posing as Christians, but they were drinking these kookions, these psychedelic spiked drinks, and having these vision quests and stuff. And they were going and telling the people at church, basically, I'm just adding some creative liberties here, but basically, you're talking about seeing God and visions and miracles and all this stuff. You guys talk about it, but man, over here, 3 houses down at my buddy Ryan's house, we're actually doing it. Come on over here, we'll show you God. And was kind of leading people astray. But the early church fathers, their number one contention with them was everything was metaphysical, nothing was physical, and they denied Christ. They said that he wasn't God in the flesh. He was just a normal man that achieved enlightenment and was showing everyone else that you can also achieve enlightenment and be like him and get this Christ consciousness. But this was during the time that the Romans were persecuting the Christians, and it was the perfect cop out to save your life. Oh no, I'm Gnostic. Jesus wasn't real. No, I don't believe in that. You know, and so a lot of the early church fathers was talking about it upset a lot of the Christians. Not only was they teaching false doctrine in their eyes, but they were also denying the physicality of Jesus. So therefore, they wasn't persecuted and burned at the stake and threw into the lion's den and all this stuff. They called them cop outs.
All right. Well, thank you for the super chat question. Who are the alleged 13 bloodlines, and what verifiable historical evidence, if any, traces their influence across major empires and institutions?
Well, like I said, this is something that I've just kind of first got into, so I've not like went deep yet, but I'm in the process. But if you guys are interested in this type of stuff, that Nicholas DeVere, The Dragon Legacy, is a great book, and he names some of them in there. Of course, I don't think they're going to show all their cards, but he talked about the DeVeres were one, the Merovingians were one, and even talked about the myths and legends of the Europeans, how they talked about the Druids and the elves, that this was the elven race, and it kind of drew back to this other family, and that all these stories where you have these mythological characters, it's basically esoteric, symbolism and hidden in plain sight, kind of talking about these bloodlines.
All right, next question is a long one. Tom Horn, a prophecy author, refers to a primeval kiva built for eschatological purposes beneath the earth, hinting at a large underground structure tied to end times beliefs. Any Bible reference? ?
Now, yeah, Tom Horn, I've read quite a bit of his stuff. I've read Unearthing the Cloud Eaters, and it was about giants. Popus Romanus, talking about the last pope. He kind of predicted who the last pope was going to be. That was pretty wild. Uh, and one of his books, it's kind of relevant for this time, was Wormwood and the Messenger. That he basically had a dream that he's seen this swirling dragon on fire coming through space and towards Earth, and that a calendar basically started flipping like crazy, and it stopped, and a finger pointed. He said to trying to think, it was September something. No, wait, yeah, it was Friday the 13th in September or April. Sorry, April. Friday the 13th, I think of 2026 or 28, something like that. I'm sorry, guys, my brain is kind of rumbling together. But anyway, he said that he had this vision, and that he said the Lord told him that this was wormwood, and he thinks that this date that was given to him was possibly wormwood striking. And according to the Bible, this happens right during the middle of the tribulation period. So it was kind of like a date set for the midpoint of the Great Tribulation. Uh, but I know he definitely talked about like the underground bunkers, the dumbs, and all that kind of stuff. And that ties into the book of Revelation, where it talks about in the end times that the kings and the leaders of the great nations will hide themselves in the mountains. Think about that. We're talking about ancient people thousands of years ago talking about world leaders hiding themselves in mountains. I mean, I mean, surely they ate some bad pizza and just seen some crazy stuff. But to me, I think that's kind of profound. And you see it all over the news. They've been doing this stuff forever. Up there in Alaska, they have that huge seed vault bank. You have the Mormons out in Utah have that huge DNA bank. They have this inside of a mountain, this huge vault full of DNA. And you have these movies like Armageddon, them, this asteroid coming towards Earth, and they blow it up to try to save humanity. Uh, what was that other one? I think it was 2025, where the world ends and this guy's running trying to save his kids. But there's this ark. There's these huge arks being built in China that they've been working on for the past 30, 40 years. I think they drop hints to all this stuff. They see it coming. They know the writing's on the wall, and they're prepping for it. That's what I believe.
What do you think of Paul Stobbs' Nephilim looked like clowns theory?
Yeah, Paul. I've had Paul on the show. He's a really smart dude, and it was definitely an out of the box thing. And if I'm just being honest, and Paul, I love you, brother. If you see this, I mean, but when I first heard that, I was like, I kind of looked at it like Dr. Joy Pugh talking to me about the serpent seed. I was like, oh man, this is ridiculous. I mean, the stuff people will do for clicks and attention. But once I actually heard him out, I was like, okay, this makes sense. As we are, when we hear clowns, we think about the modern clown with all the crazy, paint and how we view a clown. But he's saying that basically the modern clown is their spin and dramatized version of maybe what the Nephilim looked like. And what the Nephilim looked like, according to a lot of the legends and lore, because he kind of did like I did. He went through comparative mythology and went through all these different continents and stories and people groups and kind of compared them. And he found this common denominator that a lot of them were depicted with really pale skin, bloody, red colored noses. A lot of times they were giants, and all these tribes would dress up like these, hybrid god kings or whatever the situation was for their story. But that was the common denominator, is that they all kind of looked like that, and they were imitating them.
Do you think that these elite bloodlines are about to weaponize AI to either contain or eliminate us cattle bloodlines?
Oh yeah, I mean, even the Masons even talk about it, like in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. He talks like that. He's like basically the profane are cattle, and we're to be bred, worked, and when we serve no more purpose, be offed. And I think that's exactly what's going on because uh, I don't want to get you in trouble on your channel, but back in the day when we had the pokey poke, if you know what I'm saying, uh, if you go back and listen to Gates and all these different guys that are involved with the WHO and NATO and these world organizations, they were openly talking about this, a decade ago or so, but then now recently they've gotten quiet about it. But what was their number one concern? If you go back and listen to their TED Talks and all this other stuff, it was population control. Number one concern. And it kind of goes back to the lifeboat theory. There was this professor that talked about lifeboat theory, and he had this theory that if you got a group of people and put them on a boat and give them a handful of, rations for food and supplies or whatever, and set them out, that it's a matter of time before a hierarchy is set up. He said because they perceive a limited amount of resources and there has to be a competition for those limited resources. So immediately a hierarchy is set up. The strong take over and bully the weak and take what they need. And if they don't get in line, they're thrown off the boat. And that's what I think we see here because they talk about how we're lacking fresh water. We don't have enough fresh water to sustain humanity and the population for X amount of years, and the food and the land and all these, dwindling resources. We're competing for, all these resources. We need population control. And you had the Georgia Guidestones come out and basically just said it outright. And then what happens? We have the whole 2020 thing, uh, basically like the Eskimos. Uh, Once the old people get too old, what do? They off them because they can't contribute to the hunt or the society no more. That's who that
Logan's
targeted.
Run.
It
Logan's
tar-
Run. Remember that program?
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what they do, man. And so they come after the elderly, and the people with underlying health conditions, the people that are drags on the economy and the society in their eyes. That wiped out a big swath of them, and then they come up with the solution. And what happens? We've seen with the solution. We had 20-year-old soccer players and basketball players, football players, these prime athletes falling over dead on the field from blood clots and blown arteries and heart conditions. Well, where did that come from, folks? And
We better
then,
stop. We better stop there on this subject. Let's
yeah,
just hold on. So you got asked about Free Eye Atlas, the comment. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I thought that was pretty wild. That was another thing too. That was just like, man, what do you believe? But I read something on social media. I'm not sure if that's correct, but they had said that they have now confirmed that it is a comet. That they've looked at it and they can confirm that it is a comet now. So they no longer believe it's a huge mother spaceship coming to destroy us all.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be affecting our energies. It's getting here. The closest to Earth is I think it's December 19th.
Hmm.
And yeah, my partner's into everyday studying and watching videos on the Atlas. All right, well, my friend Doc, this has been so fascinating. We've kept you on for 2 hours almost. Huge thank you for being so generous with your time.
No, I
I've
appreciate
got
you,
all of
man.
I've got all of Doc's links in the description box if you're watching on replay. I'm going to put them in the live chat now. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers then?
I guess just take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm a nobody, but I like to study, and I have my opinions on things like anybody else. Uh, but yeah, man, just hear people out, do your own research, and see what you come up with. And we got to share our ideas and our research and studies with other people, like conversations we're having today with Sean. I call it the exchanging of puzzle pieces. I think we all have pieces to the puzzle, and the more conversations we have, the more puzzle pieces that we're going to gather and have a better 30,000-foot view of this crazy, messed up thing that we call life. So, but yeah, my show, if you guys like these conversations, I talk about this stuff on my show every week. It's the Prometheus Lens podcast. I coined it the hero's journey. You got to go into the unknown. You have to slay the dragon, rescue the damsel, and hoard up that treasure. But then your journey's not over. Like all great epics and heroes, you must turn around and share that wealth of knowledge with the world and save humanity. So come join us on the hero's journey.
Links are in the description. And if you've got any guests that you think would come over here as well to talk about these things, we would love to hear from them. So I'm going to close the show and let you go, my friend. Thank you for spending this time with us again. Cheers, Doc.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Cheers. All right, viewers. Yep. So like I said, absolutely fascinating. First time to get Doc on the channel. Put a 1 in the chat if you'd like us to get more guests speaking of these subjects. And we will arrange that. And I'll let you guys know what we've got coming up this week. So my next show that's booked in so far, we've got James Corbett unmasking Epstein. That is on the 25th. And then we've got the Manhattan Madam exposing Epstein and elites. Kristen Davis, also on the 25th. Going to be a busy day on the 25th. And then on the 25th as well, we have got Inside Charlie Kirk's Death, a conversation with Myron Gaines. Oh, yeah, I've been trying to speak to Myron for a while. That's going to be fascinating. But I'm sure we'll have more shows between now and then, and I'm going to organize some more call-in shows as well. So thank you for staying with us for 2 hours on Saturday night. Yeah, I did see, I've been watching Candace every night. Doing these massive live streams. She's had some sort of threats to life today. If you go on X and read her Twitter post, she's basically saying that the French government have got a hit on her, and it's related to Israel and all this other stuff. She gives a very detailed account on her X. So yeah, go over and support Candace. She's got some balls, saying the things she's saying, whether you believe her or not. To just go out there after a mate got whacked and just be pushing all the same buttons, but then some. She's definitely got some balls saying what she's saying. So yeah, let's hope she doesn't get whacked. But thank you for your support, guys. Thank you for all your questions, and please don't forget to click on Doc's links and support